fine. So I think, ma'am, we can start.
Yes.
Yeah. So a very good evening to everyone and a warm welcome to the webinar organized by Optometry Association of Assam. So it gives me an immense pleasure to have a renowned personality who is not only known for her perfection and dedications as well as the sincerity, but also known for her enormous contribution in the field of optometry. She is also known to be the queen of binocular vision, and she's none other than our very own Dr. Jamil Rizwana Husainuddin, ma'am. And without much delay, I would like to request the co-moderator of today's sessions, Mrs. Dipmala Majumdar, to introduce our speaker of the day to the participants. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Pritam. Hi, ma'am. So, good evening, everyone. I take an immense pleasure to introduce our speaker for the day, Dr. Jamil Rizwana. Dr. Rizwana was graduated from Elite School of Optometry and received her doctoral degree from Birla Institute of Technology and Science, Pilani. Now she is a fellow of American Academy of Optometry and the first clinical diplomate from India in the division of binocular vision, perception, and pediatric optometry of the American Academy of Optometry. She is currently the head of the Department of Binocular Vision and Vision Therapy, research coordinator for the scientific research activities at the Department of Visual Psychophysics, Shankar Nethralaya, Chennai, and also an assistant professor at the Elite School of Optometry. Amidst all these pronounced responsibilities, she is always dynamically involved in various education and skill training programs across the departments of optometry and vision science. From her wide-ranging scientific activities, Dr. Rizwana holds numerous peer-reviewed publications and has presented her key research outcomes at various national and international platforms. She is also a proud recipient of various prestigious grants and scholarships across the globe, amongst which the Indo-US Science and Technology Forum Scholarship and Australia Government's Endeavours Executive Fellowship are two of the most mentionable ones. Presently, she is appointed as the Ambassador of Australia Awards by the Australian High Commission. Personally speaking, I have known her closely since a very long time. She has been my faculty during my optometry education and now a friend. We fondly call her Riz Ma'am, who has been a persuader to the students and a career guru. I have seen her with full of positivity and a charming smile on face day in and day out. So needless to say, she has countless feathers on her crown, and introducing her was a mammoth task for me. Once again, I warmly welcome you, Riz ma'am. Off to you now.
Thank you, Deepmala and Preetam for that kind and generous introduction. It's quite touching, and I'm so glad to be here today. So without further ado, I will just start my presentation. And so as Deepmala said, I request everybody to keep your mics muted and your videos switched off, because that will help us to the stream without any okay. So I'm gonna mute everybody. Okay. And so I'm going to start my presentation for today. So warm welcome to everyone who's been eagerly waiting. Many of you have even come in, I think, from even 6 o'clock I'm seeing. But because the presentation, we've already announced that it begins at 6:30, we are, I think, on time, and we're going to start right now. So I'm going to keep taking a look at the chat box, and okay. Yeah, so if any of you have any concerns or any questions, please just type in the chat box. Our moderator Preetam and Deepmala will help you. We'll do the needful. Okay. So with that, I'm going to start my presentation. Just type yes if you're able to see my screen, and if you're able to hear me well, just type in yes. Okay. Okay, great. So the audience, I want every one of you to really participate in a very interactive fashion, okay? Because this is not going to be a one-on-one presentation, me speaking, and I need every one of you to actively engage with the presentation with me, with the case discussion that we are going to have today. Okay, so first I'll give you a little bit review about why did we choose this topic, okay? Like when do we give prisms and when do we give vision therapy? So see this whole topic, you know, like this topic is uh, is like kind of a debate for quite some time. Like there are different schools of thought. There is so much of lack of clarity for people who want to even like, you know, step into binocular vision, or even for experienced practitioners, it becomes sometimes an overdose, right? You know, because some people say convergence exercises are better, vision therapy is better, but some people say no, it's all woo-woo, and then some people say there is no evidence, and some people say prisms are the best. So I think there's some clarity that is required. Now, having said that, these are the prerequisites, which is the participants who are here today are expected to have some basic understanding of clinical testing and diagnosis of binocular vision anomalies, and then also basic understanding of the sequential management options. Okay, so these two are really very important. And we did circulate some basic videos for people to go through before you came for this presentation. So hope you must have gone through. Even otherwise, these are available in YouTube for us to go and take a look at it. And as I just told before, the kind of existing dilemmas are like this, like, you know, is there a scientific basis? Some people say vision therapy, the improvements that we see is purely because of the patient therapist interaction, and it is not true effect that you see. Some people say when I give prisms, people might adapt to these prisms. I don't know how much prisms to give. Some people say, you know, what is this Vergence component that you are training? Because as you know, in Vergence there are different components. You have the proximal Vergence, you have the disparity Vergence, you have the tonic Vergence. Okay, and then so people are asking, so which component of Vergence are we training? So there are too many questions, too much confusion, right? So that's why we've taken this topic for today, and I'm going to be very, very focused because the topic in itself is so very generic, and it requires a lot of deeper understanding. For the next, say, 45 minutes, it's important for us to go back with one key message. So what I thought is, okay, maybe convergence insufficiency is like really the commonest. Let's just focus on that for this particular talk. So what we're going to do over the next 45 minutes is to use a case-based approach, and then look at when do we apply vision therapy, when do we apply prism, and then what is the evidence that we have with us to really plan this, plan the whole management. Okay. So before that, let me just give you a building block. Okay. So what I call as the building block is the confusion that we have when it comes to the base direction of prisms. Okay. So first, let's just take exophoria. So in exophoria, what really happens? The eyes are outside. So so the phoria status is exo. Okay. The eyes are diverged. Now, when I say compensating fusional vergence, what do I mean by that? Is when there is a demand on the system, which is to bring the eyes back inside, okay? Because the eyes are outside. Now, for the eyes to come back inside, what is the vergence that's required, okay? What is the compensating fusional vergence that's required? Okay, so that is what we call as compensating fusional vergence. So the vergence which is in the opposite direction, that is required to bring the eyes back inside. So the demand for somebody who has exophoria is on the convergent system. Okay, and this is what we call using the term positive fusional vergence. Okay, like when we measure in the clinics in binocular vision, we use the term positive fusional vergence. Okay, so how do we measure that? We put base out prisms. Now, why do we put base out prisms? Now, look at this. Okay, this is, you have the right and the left eye, and then when I put a base out prism. Okay, so in the left eye now there is a base out prism. So what really happens is optically, all of you know that the prism bends the light rays towards the base, and this causes a shift in the image towards the apex. Now, what really happens at the retinal level is that this image gets shifted to the temporal retina. So now imagine in the left eye, you have a base out prism. So the image gets shifted to the temporal retina. Now for the fovea to go and take the image, to take that image back so that still you are able to maintain single binocular vision, is to adduct the eye or to bring the eye inside. So the eye adducts so that the fovea goes outside and then takes back that image which is on the temporal retina. And this is what we call as the fusional vergence demand. Okay, like when we put these base out prisms, to compensate for that induced shift, the eyes have to now converge. Same thing happens in base in prisms. Okay, now I want to clarify one more topic. Now imagine that this is a patient who already is having esotropia, for example. Now what really happens when you put a base out prism is, in esotropia, the image is already on the temporal retina. Okay, so when you put the base out, you are reducing the demand on the visual system already, because you are shifting that image through optical modes, through these prisms. And that is how the same base out prism will work as relieving prism in esotropia, but will work as an exercising prism or a prism that trains convergence in exo. Okay, so that is this whole concept of base out and base in. And just type in the chat box if you're able to follow this. Okay, so just type in saying yes, I am inside, I'm understanding, or whatever it is. If not, we'll go.
Ma'am, sorry to interrupt. We have an issue here. Like chat box is showing as disabled for others, and I'm not able to enable it from here.
Okay, one second.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go to security. Okay, now try. Now just ask them to try.
Yes, ma'am. It is working, ma'am. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, cool. Because we are all learning this whole technology. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. That's why I'm like, okay. And I just asked everybody, guys, are you with me? And nobody is like with me. I'm like, okay.
Yes, even I was searching and I don't find any option. So I was like, okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, cool. Okay, so this is the concept of base out and base. So let's get back again. So in esophoria, the eyes are already inside. So now you need, so which fusional vergence system is a demand? The divergence, because to compensate for this ESO, you need to bring back the eyes outside, and that is what we call as compensating vergence. So remember this terminology when we use over the next few slides. So when you want to measure, the divergence amplitudes, we just saw, you have to put base in prism so that the eyes diverge, and you want to find out what is the maximum ability of the eyes to diverge. Okay, but when you want to relieve the person out of ESO, you put base out so that the demand on the visual system is reduced. Okay, so that's how. Okay, can you please repeat this? Okay, so for Chandani, we'll just repeat this once again. So Chandani, take a look at this, and for Chandani is asking on behalf of everybody. So when you put a base out prism, as all of you know that when you put a prism, the prism bends the light rays towards the base, and the image is shifted towards the apex of this prism. So that's what is happening here. So the image that is straight ahead is now shifted towards the apex, and this image, when it passes through the prism, it falls on the temporal retina. Okay, so the base out prisms shifts the image to the temporal retina. So how the eye has to now move to fixate? The fovea has to now go to temporal side, which means the eye has to adduct, the eye has to converge, so that the fovea goes in and picks that image up. So to regain the bifoveal fixation, the eyes have to converge, and that's how base out prisms induce convergence. Okay, so that's how it works, and that's how we use it in the testing. And for those of you who want to really go understand much more in depth, really, okay, go and read these books. There's one more book I'm introducing. Usually I talk about Scheiman and Dick, but there is this book, Clinical Management of Strabismus, which is somebody, if you're interested in prisms, you should read this book. Okay, this book really takes you like step by step into every aspect of using prisms in binocular vision. Okay. And what I'm going to do today is use this evidence, which is the American Optometric Association's practice guidelines, optometric clinical practice guideline. on accommodative and Virgin's dysfunction. Okay, this is freely downloadable. If you go down, type in Google, you will get this 200 odd page document. So this is from where I'm going to speak. This is like a consensus, like all the experts come together and then give practitioners valuable tips as how to manage binocular vision dysfunction. So they compile all the evidence and they have put it into this document. Okay, so that's what we are going to use. So before I just start, I'm just going to run the first poll. Okay, so just click whatever is appropriate for you. Okay, so just click the option. If you're an undergrad, click the first option. If you're a postgrad, click the second option. Okay, cool. Wow, so I'll just wait until we get 297 on 297 done. Okay, we've got 300 people today, including the 3 of us who are. Okay, I'll just wait for a couple of seconds before I close this poll. And so I understand that most of you are actually undergrad. So currently the statistics is like 55% undergrad and 13% postgrad and 27% practicing optometrist. And I also see some ophthalms being with us today. So okay, I think some people are raising hands. I guess if you want to ask a question, you can rather type in the chat box. Okay, you can rather type in the chat box. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll now. So 55% with the optometry undergrad leads. Hey, okay, this is just for me to really understand the demographics of the audience here. So I'm going to launch the second poll now. Which is just to get a fairer idea about, if I ask you how confident are you in making the decision of prescribing prisms versus VT, just give a frank number, okay? Don't bother, this is completely anonymous, guys. I'm not going to see who is answering what. So just be very frank with your own self. If I give you a case and ask you to manage that case, where are you currently? Where is your confidence level, okay? I'm so glad that you are participating so very interactively. Okay, that's cool. So I'm seeing most of you on the 1 to 5 and 6 to 8. This is very, very normal. This is in general, you know, how people usually answer. Okay, some of you still are little hesitant to, I think, answer these polls. I request everyone to answer. We are not going to collect any information. We are not. This is anonymous polling, so please feel free to just interact and answer. Okay. So I've got a fairer understanding now, and so we've got the first poll done. We've got the second poll done, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a very interesting case, and then I'm going to ask you what will you do. Okay, so this is the case that we are going to discuss right now. So at this moment, with your current understanding, so we discussed what is positive fusional vergence, and then we discussed, positive fusional vergence is the compensating vergence to exophoria. It represents convergence amplitudes. And so look at this case, read this case, and then feel free to choose an option. Feel free to choose an option. Don't really worry, okay? Don't worry about whether you are right or wrong. Just choose the option that you feel is right, okay? There is no right or wrong answers to these questions, basically. It's only for us to understand how things are, okay? So once I get 50% of answers, at least then I will stop the poll. So we are now reaching 50%. And request everyone to be really very, very open, and you're not being judged. We're here to learn together, okay? We're just going to share knowledge and then learn together. So be very open, and then I'm really glad the percentage of responses is increasing. And so because people are keeping answering and they're thinking and answering, so I'm just going to wait for like 5 more seconds before I close the poll. Because some of you have really low bandwidth and low internet connectivity, so I have to give it to you. And so I'm going to wait a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to stop the polling, and I'm just going to show just the compiled result. Okay, just take a look at these compiled result. Okay, this is how generally the practice pattern is. Okay, so when we ask a question like, okay, so how do you manage So say 55% of you say vision therapy, 23% say both, and there is 5% of you wants expert opinion, and 16% of you would say, like you said, you need prisms. Okay, okay. So let's just stop here, and what I'm going to do right now is to now get into the case. Okay, let's now start understanding this case a little bit better. So this is the case that we just saw, the 15-year-old male school student complaining of eye strain. He says after 20 minutes, my eye strain, my symptoms start, and near exophoria is 15 prisms. You can understand the eyes are like really like, you know, diverged. Of course, it's phoria, so you won't see it manifest, but when you do the cover test, you can really see the eyes quickly coming back inside. For distance, normal exophoria, normal phoria. The near point of convergence is like really very weak, it's receded, and the positive fusional vergence amplitudes, which is the compensating vergence, okay, the convergence amplitudes, because if somebody has exo, they have to have good convergence, but here the convergence amplitudes are like this. Now, how do I make sense of this? I will tell you, don't worry. Patient has normal amplitude of accommodation and no significant refractive error, okay. So how many of you have seen similar cases like this? Okay, just type in the chat box, yes, I see, and then I'll just keep proceeding. Okay, now there are two questions in front of us. What do I do and how do I manage? Okay, so the first thing is, what do I do? So what do? You have these options. You have the, I think everyone is saying, yes, yes, I see. Okay, hi, welcome from Qatar. I'm not seeing any page. Okay, so Vidisha, you might have to just refresh a little bit. Okay, good, Vidisha, you are okay. So many of you say yes, you see, yes. Okay, and this is the option. Okay, pencil push-ups, prism, surgery, vision therapy, which can be done in the clinic, which can be done at home, which can be done together. So this is like, what do? You have to choose one or more than one from this option. And now, when you really look at what evidence says, okay, because if you have to do evidence-based management, right? So if you look at the evidence, this is a survey, a recent survey that tells about what to practice, not recent survey, I'm sorry, a survey done in 2002 that tells about what practitioners prefer. How do they prefer to treat convergence insufficiency? And look at this. Look at the conclusion. Most eye care practitioners prescribe pencil push-ups as the initial treatment for convergence insufficiency. So this survey led to what we call as the convergence insufficiency treatment trial. So after the survey in the United States, they said, okay, still pencil push-up seems to be occupying the space. So we're talking 20 years before, guys. We're talking about a time 20 years before, okay. The same kind of a survey was done in India about 15 years back, and we got the same results, okay. A group from AIIMS did the survey. And but what happened is what is interesting. So after they did this survey, they did a randomized clinical trial to find out which is the best option. And then what did they find actually is this. They found that after 12 weeks of vision therapy, okay, after 12 weeks of vision therapy, majority of patients had improvements in near points of convergence and convergence amplitudes, and compared to home-based pencil push-ups, home-based vision therapy, and office-based pencil push-ups. Okay, so they compared office-based vision therapy with home-based pencil push-up exercises, home-based computer orthoptics, as well as in the office also there was a placebo group which did pencil push-ups. And what they found was the pencil push-ups was as good as placebo treatment, like it's as good as doing nothing. Okay, the office-based vision therapy had the maximum improvement. So this is the first clinical trial, randomized clinical trial that came out of the convergence insufficiency treatment trial. Now the second thing is what they also did, because the previous study that I just discussed, it's all on children 9 to 17 years. Okay, so they did the study on 72 children between 9 through 17 years. So because everybody was practicing prisms also, right? So they have to study prisms. So what they did is they gave prisms and also looked at how it worked compared to just simple placebo reading glasses, like plain glasses without prisms. And what they found was base in prism glasses were found to be no more effective in alleviating symptoms or in improving the near point of convergence or the convergence amplitudes compared to placebo glasses, which means in children the prisms were equally very ineffective. Whereas based on the previous trial, we understand that the office-based vision therapy was the best option. Okay, so what the authors later did is that they put everything together and then they did what we call as the Cochrane, in the Cochrane library, they put a systematic review. So systematic reviews, they combined every randomized control trial. So 6 randomized control trials. So don't worry if you're not understanding these terminologies. They combined all the studies, and as a clinician, as an optometry student, this is what you have to remember. When you are dealing with a kid, when you're dealing with a child, when you're dealing with a younger population, base in prism glasses are no more effective compared to placebo. Vision therapy and orthoptics is more effective than home-based convergence exercises. And also, when you are looking at other non-surgical interventions, like in adults, okay, because this is 9 to 17 years, but in adults, there is not much evidence. Okay, so this is what the study group came out with. Are you all with me right now that in children, vision therapy seems to be working well in 9 to 17 years? Are you all with me, or do you need, welcome, Mr. Yadav from Nepal. So this, like from Malaysia, I'm seeing everybody. Okay, good. Okay, so you're all with me. I'm happy. Now I'm going to show you something very interesting, okay, which is this. Okay, look at this 1971 paper. Okay, this paper looked at adults. Okay, in adults they did give prisms. Okay, so the Worrell et al. In 1971 for 43 patients, what they had is they did a randomized clinical trial. So what they did is 2 identical frames. So for one group they gave prisms, and the other group they gave a plain spectacles. And is this is very important, guys. Just remember this. The lenses with base out prisms were preferable to patients, but base in was preferred only by presbyopes for near point activities, which means, of course, the study did not discuss about how many convergence insufficiency, what kind of binocular vision problem, all that. But in general, when they look at the preference of patients for prisms, like preference means whether my symptoms, whether I'm able to read comfortably after I get these glasses. Okay, that is an immediate indicator. And base in prisms was preferred only by presbyopes, but base out prisms were preferred in the younger population. Okay, so this is something you have to remember. And these are all big people. See this name, this Morgan. Morgan was the one who gave the normative data, which we continue to use right now. So this is like a very strong study group that gave these results. Okay. So now I have told you 2 things. Okay. From this paper, there are 2 concepts. Number 1, look at this. How much prisms to prescribe was calculated by Sheard's criterion. Okay, they say that they calculated using something called Sheard's criterion. So I'm going to launch my next poll, and I want to understand about your knowledge about Sheard's criterion. Okay, so again, it's anonymous. Just go ahead and then okay, so what I'm going to do today is to okay, so look at the same patient. So for our patient, if I ask you, like even if you don't know about Sheard's criterion, it's okay. You can choose one option from here. Suppose if you know Sheard's criterion, then what is the expected fusional versions reserve based on? I really like you guys. I love you guys, seriously. I mean, because some of you are saying, I don't have any idea. And that's what we want. Like, we want people to be really very honest, okay? I really want you guys to be honest because the Kishore and other people told me like most of them are student population. You have to go very basics. I'm here to teach you only. Don't worry, okay? Don't worry, okay? Just type in whatever answer that you feel like. If you know Sheard's criterion, just click an answer. Otherwise, click you don't have an idea. So what I'm asking is, if somebody has 15 prisms of exophoria, what does Sheard say? Do you have an idea as what Sheard expects the convergence amplitudes to be? Okay, how much should be the fusional reserve in prism diopters? Okay, so because 70% of you answered, I'm just ending the poll. And what I'm going to show you is this, okay? Okay, so this is just the poll result at this moment, okay? So look at these, about 38% of you say 30 prisms, and then the answer shifts here, there, and 44% wants to know about Shears criteria, okay? Okay, so let's now learn about Shears criteria. What is Shears criteria? Shears criteria is nothing but the relationship between the demand and the reserve. What is the demand? The Fourier status. If somebody has got a certain amount of Fourier, like 15 prisms of exophoria, what is the expected convergence amplitude that they have to have, so that they should not, so that they don't have any symptoms. Okay, so if I have exo, how much convergence should I have so that I remain asymptomatic, I remain free of symptoms? Okay, so what he said is just keep it twice. He said keep the fusional reserve twice that of the demand. So suppose somebody has 15 prisms of exophoria, you measure the convergence amplitudes. If you find the convergence amplitudes to be 30 prisms or above, if it is twice or greater, then that patient is likely to be asymptomatic. That patient can manage the demand on the exophoria. Okay, and same thing, if somebody has got an ESO, then you have to look at the divergence amplitudes. Okay, so basically whatever is the Fourier, the compensating fusional vergence we discussed at the very beginning, the compensating fusional vergence should be twice that of the Fourier. Okay, so that is what he said. And think about this analogy, you will not forget. If somebody if somebody is triggering you, okay, to get angry, okay, they just keep telling wrong things and bad things, but you have so much of compassion within you, like you are not naturally so kind and so compassionate, then whatever they do, you're not going to get triggered. So the fusional vergence reserve is like that. Okay, so whatever is the deviation of your eyes, if you have adequate reserves, if you have very good amplitudes, if you have very good control of that Fourier, then you're not going to land up with symptoms, basically. So you're not going to get angry at all in this case. Okay, so it's very similar to that analogy that I love to use actually when we talk about Shears criteria. Okay, and this is the paper. Of course, if somebody is very interested, 1929 paper, I can send you this paper. So this is what Shear did. Like, he of course used a lot of Percival's graph. Okay, the two people who worked on this area. So it's very important to remember to know the name of these scientists who contributed so much to optometry. Okay, and then so this professor, this is what he did. He put all these graphs and he said, if you have this much convergence and if you have this much accommodation, then what is the zone of comfort? Okay, people use this kind of an approach for a longer period, and some practitioners still continue to use it. Okay, in the Western countries, of course. So he just said one thing which I want you to remember. Remember this. Please prescribe prisms in cases of vertical imbalance. So after he did all this, he said if somebody has a vertical imbalance, even if it is one prism diopter or more, consider prism. This is the first message. So the first take home, which is in favor of prisms, is this, which is any amount of vertical imbalance should need to be corrected. Okay, even if patients have convergence insufficiency and they have a little bit of vertical, you need to correct that so that you can start to work on the convergence amplitudes. Okay, and you might think like, why should we know all this? But this is the foundation which we should really know to understand why we are speaking these concepts. Okay, so what after Shear gave all these, what the next research happened, where they looked at how vision therapy really works. Okay, when people fail the Shears criteria, so what do we mean when people fail Shears criteria? So somebody has 15 exo, but their convergence amplitudes are less than 30. Okay, it's not twice, it's less than that amount. Then how does vision therapy helps? And look at this, it just says that almost out of the 100 patients, 84 patients after therapy, they improved. They met the Shears criteria. Okay, so people who, out of the 100 patients who did not meet the Shears criteria, who failed the Shears criteria, who did not have convergence amplitudes adequate enough to handle that exophoria, they improved after vision therapy. 84% improved after vision therapy. So that is the effect of vision therapy on the convergence. Okay, So this is the first message that I want to give. So if you want to take a message from here, then when do we have to give prisms? Of course, these are different options. We can give horizontal prisms, we can give vertical prisms, we can give prisms when we want to support vision therapy, because some patients may not really be able to do therapy, they may not able to converge. Then you can give prisms as a mode to start therapy, then take away the prisms. Then suppose if vision therapy is not at all going to work, I'll come back to it later, then it is important that you prescribe prisms. And you can also use exercising prisms towards the end of therapy, okay? Even one prism, look at the impact of it on the horizontal fusional vergence amplitudes and please correct it, okay? That's the first message. Okay, so far I guess things are okay. Now we were discussing about children and young adults. What about presbyopes? Because this is at another age group where you see a lot of people with convergence insufficiency. So this study group looked at progressive addition glasses with basin prisms. Okay, so they were prescribing progressive glasses with basin. This is a study that was done in 2012, and very interestingly, this was a very novel type of progressive design where only in the near zone the basin prisms were prescribed. So they explain about how they managed to do that in the paper. You can go and read that paper. But what they found is that in presbyopes, especially who have symptomatic convergence insufficiency, at least for the short term, these progressive glasses with basin prisms worked. Okay, so they chose presbyopes above 45 years. But how did they prescribe prisms? Now, how much prisms they prescribe? So I said you have to know two things. I said you have to know Sheard's criteria. I said you have to know associated FORIA. So hope that the Sheard's criteria is clear, which is your fusional versions demand should be twice that of the FORIA. Okay, so if you have 10 ESO, you have to have at least 20 prisms of divergence. If you have 10 EXO, you have to have at least 20 prisms of convergence. So that is what is the Sheard's criteria. Okay, now we are going to go into the associated FORIA criteria. Okay, so before that, I'll just show you this. You can take notes. Okay, I want you to take notes. I want you to write down certain things because sometimes it's important to grasp too many things at the same time. So this is the approach that the American Optometric Association proposes as how should I choose my treatment option. So, if you have this table in your clinic and you know a patient has convergence insufficiency. So look at this. The first column is the primary option. So what should you take? What should you consider first and what should you consider next? Okay, these are the primary treatment option and secondary treatment option. So look at what are all the conditions where prisms is indicated. Okay, so prisms are indicated only in 3 conditions. What are the 3 conditions? Divergence insufficiency. What is divergence insufficiency? When somebody has an esophoria for distance, okay, because it's very difficult for somebody to fuse for distance, okay, like with the esophoria, it's difficult to diverge at distance, okay, especially when somebody have a high tonic vergence, okay, then they need prisms, especially like in basic esophoria. So any kind of a ESO for distance, basically, remember for near it's a different story. Okay, for near, like when you have convergence excess, you will need plus lenses, but when you have esophoria for distance, prism should be the first option. The second option are like we were discussing for vertical deviations. Okay, so this is the table that you can use. Now, okay, now I want to prescribe prisms. How much should I prescribe? Okay, so let's just do a small mathematics here. So Sheard gave this formula. Okay, so what did Sheard do? Sheard gave this formula. He gave this, the formula states like 2/3 into FORIA. So 2/3 of the FORIA minus 1/3 of the compensating fusional vergence, which is nothing but 2/3 of the demand minus 1/3 of the reserve. So you have to put the FORIA value here. So measure the FORIA, put the FORIA value here, measure the compensating fusional vergence. So if you have EXO, you have to measure positive fusional vergence or convergence. If you have ESO, you have to measure divergence amplitudes and put that value. Now the same 15-year-old child has 15 prisms of exophoria at near and his convergence amplitudes are 15, 20, 15. What does this mean? You are putting prisms. He's complaining of blur at 15 prisms. He's reporting double at 20 prisms. Then you have to come back to 15 where he is reporting single vision pack. Okay, now this is the status. Now how do I put it inside this formula? 2 by 3 into the Fourier, which is 15, minus 1 by 3 into the blur value. Suppose there is no blur value, use the break value. Remember, if there is no blur value when you're doing your convergence amplitude measurements, you can use the break value here. Okay, so finally you will get 5 prisms. So suppose if you want to prescribe prisms for this particular child, then you will have to prescribe 5 prisms equally split between both the eyes, like 2.5 base in, because you are trying to prescribe relieving prisms. I'm just giving this example because suppose if this child says, I have to say a child who is in grade 12 is coming to you. I have exams tomorrow. I want to read comfortably, and I can't do any vision therapy right now. What will you do? You will have to prescribe prisms to that child to manage that situation, then come back for vision therapy. So you should always know how much prisms to prescribe. You should not randomly give some numbers. Okay. So remember this formula. Now, if you're clear with this formula, I'm going to ask you a question now. So tell me if you want me to explain this again. Ma'am, please share your screen. Can't only table not visible. Screen is not visible. I think Manan. Okay, can you guys see my screen? I think some of you have internet connectivity which is unstable. Okay, I'll explain it again. Okay, good. I'll explain this again. Okay.
See your screen, ma'am. It is visible. Yes.
Okay, thanks. I think some of them have internet connectivity issues. Okay, so how much prisms to prescribe? If you want to know that, you have to know 2 things. You have to know the Fourier status of the person. So you have to do a cover test, a prism measurement, and find out the amount of Fourier. And you have to know the compensating vergence, which we are discussing from the very beginning. But I don't mind repeating it again. So if somebody has exo, like the eyes are outside, you have to measure their convergence amplitudes. Okay, so you have to put base out prisms and measure the compensating fusional vergence amplitude. So learn these techniques. If you don't know, go back to the previous YouTube video I suggested and take a look. Now, if you do these 2 tests and if you have the value, all that you need to do is put that value into this formula, okay, which is 2 by 3 into that Fourier value here. Again, no sign convention. Okay, some people use minus for exo, plus for e, so nothing of that sort here. Just put only the value. So put those values here, and if you do a proper maths, then you will end up with some number. Of course, these 2, don't confuse these brackets. This is like one full bracket and this is one full bracket. Okay, the one before and after the minus signs are things that need to be handled separately. Now I'm going to ask you a question, okay, and then I will know how many of you have understood this correctly. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a new question now. Okay, so a 50-year-old gentleman is coming to you and he says, I'm having constant double vision. And this is the Fourier status and this is the convergence amplitude. So take your time and then remember the formula. I'm putting the formula on the page for your so 2 by 3 into 12, which is the exo, minus 1 by 3, I said it says no blur, take the break, which is 1 by 3 into 15. Okay, and if you do a proper match, then you should be able to come out with the number. I know it just takes some time for us to do, especially given the current circumstance where we're not really giving, we're just relaxing and I'll wait for some time. But some of you are like the super maths, because the moment I put the question, I saw like about a few people like immediately putting in the answer. I'm so glad many of you are answering it correctly. Very good, very good. Come on. I'll just wait for another 10 seconds to close the poll. Don't worry, as I already told you, this is anonymous polling. Nobody's going to know who is answering what. It's only for your learning. So use this time to, even if you do it wrong, it's okay, but you will learn how to do it right? So just give the attempt. My dear colleagues and friends, students and practitioners, please make that attempt. That's so very important, you know. Attempting is the first victory. Taking that step is the first victory. I'm giving a motivational lecture now. Okay, so I'll wait for 2 more seconds. Okay, and then I'm going to stop the polling. Okay, good. We got 200 responses. And then, you know, 81% of you said 3 prism space in, and that is the right answer. So if you really do the maths, 2 by 3 into 12 minus 1 by 3 into, so this is the answer. So 1 by 3 into 15, you will actually get 3. Okay. I think some of you chose this because you wanted to split. Now, after you get 3, how will you prescribe? You give 1.5 and 1.5. Okay. You split it between the eyes. And that's fantastic. I'm so very glad looking at the way you are answering, and we are like, you know, we're reaching our goals. Okay. Okay, so now it's time to learn the last concept for the day. Okay, with this we are finishing the presentation for today. Okay, so be very happy. We are going to talk about associated phoria. So if there's one thing you have to learn very new from this presentation, then learn this. Okay, so what is associated phoria? Associated phoria, like all of you know about normal phoria, normal cover test and prism measurement, which is called as dissociated phoria. Why it's called dissociated phoria? Because you are dissociating the eyes by breaking the fusion. Okay, that is why it's called dissociated phoria. In associated phoria, you don't do a cover test at all. Just give a polarizing glasses to the patient and ask the patient to report. These are called like these are the common targets used to measure associated phoria. Like this is how you will see, okay, like a plus, and we call the plus as the fusion lock, and we call these lines, okay, as the Nonius lines. These are Nonius lines. So if you remember how stereopsis works, when you put these polarizing glasses, you will see one line with one eye and the other line with other eye, and the plus with both the eyes. So the plus serves as the fusion lock. So you are not really dissociating the eyes here. So both eyes are open. Under binocular viewing, error, okay, what is the misalignment of the system under binocular viewing conditions? So if you really want to know the fundamentals, then you should know about Panem's fusional area and you know what is fixation disparity and all. But as the term suggests, whenever we are fixating on something, we are never accurately fixating there. We are either under converging a little bit or over converging a little bit, and that error is called fixation disparity. Like to put it simply, if you understand lag and lead of accommodation in accommodation, so in accommodation we call lag of accommodation, lead of accommodation. Same way in vergence, we use the term fixation disparity. That's all. So this is a vergence error, but under binocular viewing conditions. So what we do, let's just look at this. So you just put the person with the polarizing glasses and ask the patient to report. Now patient says it's slightly misaligned. So you can have crossed error or uncrossed error, like how you see in generally in your words for dot and things like that. So depending on, so suppose if the right eye's image is on the other side, which is crossed, then you put base in prisms and neutralize that. So the job of the optometrist is to get both the lines aligned. Basically a vernier task, okay, a vernier acuity task that you are doing, but under binocular viewing condition. So these are different units available, like mallet. These are names of the test. So we use the Saladin card. Okay, so this is the this is the Saladin card that we use, where we use these polarizing glasses and we find the fixation disparity. Now this is very much required for you to find out the minimum amount of prism. So what is the prism that is required to align this is what is called as associated phoria. So tell me how many of you understood this concept of finding out associated phoria. Okay, type yes. Type yes if you are yes, there's a question. I'll take questions towards the end. Okay, thank you guys. Okay, somebody says no. I'm gonna explain for those people. Okay, so dissociated phoria is when you're going to break the fusion, okay, through your cover paddle, and then you're going to put prisms and measure. Okay, that is what is this, which is conventionally all of us know how to do it. But here you are not doing any cover test. You just put polarizers, give the target, ask the patient about the separation of the target, and depending on the separation. So patient says it's separated. Suppose if there is no separation, then there is no associated phoria. Okay, binocularly also they are aligned. Suppose it is misaligned, you are going to put prisms and then get the line aligned. Okay, that is the task. And when you do dissociated Fourier, you will get the maximum amount of prisms. Okay, now here associated Fourier is going to give the minimum amount. What is the minimum amount of correction prisms that are required for somebody to see single? That's all it is. Okay, because you're not dissociating the eyes, you're finding out the bare minimum level of misalignment that is present under binocular viewing condition. In fact, people say that this is what represents how symptomatic people can become. Like people who have larger amounts of associated Fourier tend to be more symptomatic. In fact, if you really want to understand more in depth, if you do these tests, you will understand how the two components of the Vergence system work, how the slow Vergence works and how the fast Vergence works. Okay, so for students who want to explore more, you can do more, read more. Now this is vertical, same thing. Okay, same polarizer, same way, but the test is turned, and then now you are doing vertical misalignment. So just remember how you do your Maddox testing, like very similar way. So you just orient the Maddox rod accordingly. Here you are not orienting the Maddox, you're just putting the polarizing glasses and using a test. Okay, so if you really look at suggested methods for prescribing prisms, this is a beautiful paper where again for different conditions people have mentioned what to choose. But if you really look at, everybody talks about using the fixation disparity based testing to determine the amounts of prism. Why do they talk about fixation disparity and associated Fourier? Like all this time we only know, okay, you measure Fourier, you put prisms, you neutralize it and give the prisms. Now why people are talking, this is like a paper from 1990, concept is there from 1940s. Okay, so why do we talk about associated Fourier is because you have to find the minimum amount of prisms that is required. Okay, that is why you do this. Okay, and I just want to tell you one thing here. In all cases of binocular vision, okay, the choice to prescribe prism is completely up to the clinician. Okay, now you have to decide what is more appropriate for the patient. Okay, so whenever you want to prescribe prisms, I would highly recommend using an associated Fourier based approach. Okay, and then you find the minimum amount of prism, or if you don't have an associated Fourier, test, do this. Okay, like whatever amount of Fourier that you measure, suppose patient is symptomatic. Okay, and then he wants an immediate solution, or he's seeing double, so you have to prescribe. Just prescribe 1/3 of the prism. Okay, 1/3. If you find 10 prisms, just give 3 prisms. Split it between the two eyes. Make him sit for some time. Okay, so initially what you can actually do is find the, one second, I'll just see if there's some. Okay, so I'll answer all your questions later. Okay, I think questions are popping up. Okay, so put these prisms, put 1/3 of the prism and make him sit in the waiting room for 10 minutes. Okay, then you remeasure the Fourier status. Okay, because if patient is adapting to the prism, because many of us say they eat prisms, people adapt to prisms. What do you mean by that? What do we mean by adapting to prisms or eating up prisms? Okay, if somebody has a very good Vergence adaptation system, okay, like if I'm able to compensate for whatever you put, okay, suppose, so I said 10 exophoria, I said 3, you make the patient wait outside for 10 minutes, you call the patient back, okay, and then you remeasure the Fourier. Okay, so you remeasure the Fourier. So if the Fourier is the same amount, like whatever you measured before you put these prisms, okay, then this patient has got good Vergence adaptation. There's no need to prescribe prisms here. But suppose if you see that the Fourier increases, okay, the Fourier just shifts to the other side, like you saw 10, you actually put like 1/3 and then you remeasure and then the Fourier increases, which means he's starting to take up, the eyes are trying. We say like the eyes become lazy when you put prisms, and you can easily find out. Generally, you have to measure associated Fourier and then put that amount of prisms. After 10 minutes, remeasure the associated Fourier and see if the Fourier remains the same. But if there is good Vergence adaptation, then the Fourier will be the same as what you measured before. But if it is not, if patient starts accepting, like adapting to the prism, then you might have to think, okay, shall I start prescribing prisms or shall I start doing vision therapy? This is one way to do prism adaptation technique. Okay. So for some of you, like people keep saying there's no scientific basis for therapy, please go read this paper. This paper talks in and about how the accommodation and the version system interaction happens. And they say, Kufrida like kind of explains in this paper very nicely as how vision therapy can play a great role in improving, binocular vision in non-strabismic problems. Okay, but this is, though published in 2002, this still remains an article that provides sound knowledge. Just to wrap up things, okay, because we discussed so much, but we discussed some concepts of what is the demand, what is the reserve, and general guidelines for prisms is this. Okay, so whenever somebody has got a distance ESO, like a high tonic versions, or somebody has got an intermittent strabismus, okay, where they've started to complain of diplopia, constant diplopia or intermittent diplopia, then definitely you can go ahead with prisms. The next thing is in vision therapy, you can definitely in vertical foria, you can definitely use prisms. Okay, so just to wrap up everything put together, whenever you see a patient with exophoria, if the patient is young, please use vision therapy. And you can use prisms if even in young patients, they can have diplopia sometimes, because if the fusional versions, reserves are not good, okay, they can have diplopia. Or when you start vision therapy, they say they are not able to cope up. Or as the case we discussed just before, if they want an immediate solution, or if you see somebody with other comorbidities, even younger patients who have other systemic diseases, other physical ailments that prevents them from doing vision therapy, consider prisms. Okay, but always you should know how to prescribe prisms, and Shear's criteria can be used for calculating the minimum amount of prisms, and associated Fourier measurements can be done. And you can also understand if these patients will benefit from prisms or not. But if you're dealing with a presbyo, then look at associated Fourier, or at least 1/3 of whatever that you measure, and look at an improvement in symptoms. The moment you put these prisms, see if there's an immediate improvement. Okay, but keep a close watch and give a trial of vision therapy. Why do I say that is again because we have a case series that's coming up. Okay, our team has worked, and we were surprised to see how 65-year-old and 70-year-old patients did vision therapy with so much of I think involvement, because what they needed was a conservative management. They didn't want to wear an additional glass. They didn't want to wear these thick prism glasses, and they were very cooperative, and vision therapy improved, especially in convergence insufficiency. It improved their convergence so much. Okay, so don't really judge. Okay, so now what we're going to do is that we're going to go back to our so now what I want you to do is this. Okay, I'm going to do the poll again, and I'm going to ask you about so I'm going to ask, okay, before I do this, I want you to type in the chat box for this particular case, 15-year-old patient, what is your preferred treatment option? Okay, so which is our poll. I'm going to relaunch this poll. Okay, so previously I just remember 55% said vision therapy. So I'm going to relaunch the poll. Okay, go ahead, and then now that we have discussed evidence-based approach, and then how we should really go about managing this case, I want to see your mind shift and perspective change as what you will do, and then I'm going to share these results just for everybody to also see how when we have more perspective and understanding how things can change. Okay, so I'm going to wait for at least 50% of you to answer, and then take the decision. So 15-year-old patient with 15 prisms basin, and of course patient is not meeting the Shear's criteria, because based on Shear's criteria he has to have at least 30 prisms, but still he is young, he's not having any double vision, and so what will you do? Okay, so think about what you want to do. Okay, so okay, I'll just wait for at least, because usually about 200 of you answered. So, okay, I just have, okay. Okay, so I'm going to end the polling, and you know what? I'll just share this polling. Wait, okay, so all of you can see. Okay, so earlier there was an equal shift between vision therapy to prisms, but now you want to go between vision therapy and both. So of course there is a small increase here, and people want to use both. I will actually still go with both these options, because when you start vision therapy, only you will know he is how well he is able to cope with the demands of the vision therapy. Now given this situation, it is possible that patient might find it very difficult, so you might want to give some amounts of prisms to help him, but don't come into the judgment. Okay, never ever judge, especially younger patients. Never ever judge, even though he has, so he might do very well with therapy. Okay, so always try vision therapy first and then take this option of using both. And nobody wants to take expert opinion now, see, because you become an expert now. Okay, so keep typing in the chat box is what is the one take home message from today as we come to the end of this presentation. What is the one take home message that you've learned through this presentation that you will want to go and explore further or read further or incorporate in your implement in your practice? Okay, so I want you to type that in your chat box. And yeah, so I will definitely take your questions. Don't worry. I'll definitely take your questions. Okay, Sheard's criteria, and associated phoria. Yeah, please keep typing in, because prismatic assistance in cases of vertical imbalance. Yeah, evidence-based practice, associated phoria. I'm very, very happy to see all this. And as this keeps going, I'm just going to launch the last poll of today, which is just to see now if your case of convergence. I'll be very specific here. Okay, suppose if a convergence insufficiency patient comes in, how do you take that decision? Okay, so how do you make the choice between prisms versus vision therapy? What is your confidence level on a scale of 1 to 10? 10 is like super good, I don't need anything, I just know everything kinds. And then just keep answering, as well as people who finish the polling can just type in the chat box as what is your learning from today. Okay, so what did you take home? What is it one thing that you will take home and you will learn, you will implement it, or so it's so fantastic. You know what, about 90% of you are between 6 to 8 and 9 to 10. Okay, and 10% of you are still trying to, this is usually like a normal distribution here. Now if you really see, if you ask me the same question, I will give a 6 to 8. I'll always tell people to kind of stay a little bit low on the confidence level. I don't want you to stay on 1 to 5, but stay on the border, because when you stay on the 8, okay, you always have the scope to learn further, because the evidence keeps changing, the evidence keeps evolving, and tomorrow if the practice changes, you should be willing to change that practice, which means you have to stay kind of on the edge of the confidence, not like say I am really confident, but then stay at the edge of that confidence and be willing to learn more and explore more. So I really, I agree with all those who are in that 6 to 8 category. The 1 to 5 is just one number jumping here, and the 9 to 10, yes, you are very confident at this moment, but just keep learning. Okay, so I'm just ending the polling at this point. And I'm really super thankful for all the comments that are coming in. So we did finish, and I'm just going to end with my acknowledgements here. First of all, to everybody in the Assam Optometry Association team, because beginning from Mr. Kishore, who is my super senior at the elite school, and I was so glad to get back in touch with him. And of course, you see Preetham here, who's coordinating the show along with Deepmala. So Preetham was our team. He did masters under the binocular vision team. And then, of course, our own Deepmala. So I'm so glad to really see the work these people are doing for the state, like to get, this is how all of us should really work towards uplifting optometry. And kudos to all of you, and my beautiful team here, the entire team that's here. With all our optometrists and fellows, so these are the ones, like the backbone of our SN, like SN binocular vision team. So I finish here, and thank you for all your feedback. And yes, over to you.
Yeah.
Rizwana, for
Yes, ma'am.
being
So
up.
looks like we have like almost, you have almost covered all the questions, and glad to receive so many responses from the participants. Like again, like few of them have questions, like we are very much glad to have the questions, and please request you to write those questions into the mail which you have received after the registration details. We shall share that with ma'am, and we'll try to come up with another sessions where we can discuss those questions. Yeah, so without much delay, I would like to request now Mr. Kishore Kumar Chaudhary, President of Optometry Association of Assam, to deliver the vote of thanks to ma'am. Over to you, sir.
Hello,
I
good evening,
hear
one and
you.
all. It's always my pleasure to propose the vote of thanks on the webinar organized by Optometry Association of Assam. First of all, my heartfelt thanks goes to our today's honorable and renowned speaker, Dr. Jamil Rizwana, who has spared her most precious time with us and delivered a very productive and informative lecture on when prisms and when vision therapy. I extend my sincere thanks to our today's moderator, Optum Deepmala and Optum Pritam, for the successful conduction of the webinar. Finally, my special thanks goes to our today's participants. Today, we are delighted with many international and national participants. So my special thanks goes to all of them. Your attendance will always encourage us towards the upliftment of optometry by doing various academic activity. So thank you all for your active participation. Looking forward to your love and support in future. Thank you all.
Okay.
Thanks, Preeti.
Yeah,
Thanks,
great.
Dr.
Thank you,
Rizwana.
sir. Thank you so much, ma'am. And thank you, everyone. We appreciate
Thank you,
you being
everyone.
joining here today. And thanks again for joining us today. And we'll see you probably in the next sessions. So thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah,
And thank you so
thank
much,
you.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye
ma'am.
bye.
Bye-bye.